Imagine arriving in a new country, all set, ready to dive into university life, only to find out that the biggest hurdle isn't just, speaking the language day to day. It's really understanding and producing academic English. And underestimating that could put your whole degree at risk. What if just reading a textbook becomes this really demanding, specialized skill you just hadn't prepared for? Welcome to Daily English Practice. Listen and speak. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of English for student life abroad. We've got a stack of sources here, guides on daily life, really detailed stuff on academic writing. Our mission really is to pull out the most important bits of knowledge for you, give you a kind of shortcut so you feel well-informed for your international student journey.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is how all these sources point to the same thing. Success abroad isn't just about being fluent in English, not at all. It's about having a whole toolkit, really. Academic skills, practical skills. We're going to explore that toolkit today, try to connect the dots between, say, good writing, thinking critically, and even just getting involved socially.
Okay, right, so let's unpack that, because student life abroad, it's way more than just lectures, isn't it? Our sources really stress these practical things, especially when you're just settling in.
Absolutely. And maybe the first place to start, a really solid foundation, is managing your money effectively. Financial planning. Our sources talk about identifying your income scholarships, maybe part-time work, family help, and then, crucially, making a monthly budget. For rent, food, transport, fun. Oh, and don't forget student discounts. They can make a huge difference in stretching that budget. Little savings here and there really add up.
That's super practical advice, and it kind of leads into the next big thing, finding a place to live, right? Setting up that home base. Apartment hunting gets mentioned a lot.
It does. And if you're looking at renting privately, not student halls, there are three key things our sources highlight. First, is the area safe? Second, how good is the public transport? And third, are shops and essential services nearby? Seems obvious, maybe.
Yeah, but easy to forget when you're excited about a new place.
Exactly. You can get caught up in the moment and overlook these really fundamental things that affect your daily life.
So, okay, you've got your finances roughly sorted, you've found somewhere to live. What about actually connecting with people? How do students build a social life and, feel like they belong?
That's a really important question because it can be quite isolating otherwise.
Yeah.
Universities usually offer loads of social activities, things like cultural exchange programs, volunteering, sports clubs, art stuff, music festivals, different social clubs. Our sources are clear. These are fantastic ways to make new friends, enjoy your time, get involved, and specifically for connecting with other international students. Definitely go to the welcome events the university puts on for you guys. Use social media groups for students. Group projects in class are good too. Even internships can help you meet people.
It really sounds like it's about the whole person, doesn't it? Not just the academic side. But let's circle back, like you said, to the English part, because the sources definitely highlight language skills beyond just chatting.
Absolutely. And just before we leave the practical stuff, health and insurance are vital. Seriously. Many countries have special student health insurance schemes. Look into those before you go. And yes, language. Strengthening your language skills before you start your course is just crucial, both for class and for daily life. The source specifically mentions preparing for tests like IELTS or TOEFL if your course is in English. You have to prove you're proficient enough to cope academically.
Right, which brings us neatly into the academic side. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, for anyone facing academic work in English. Our main source here, academic writing, it really breaks down the writing process itself, starting right from the beginning. It's more structured than you might think.
Oh, definitely. What's fascinating is seeing it laid out so systematically. It's not just about, sitting down and writing. The book walks you through each stage, selecting good sources, reading them effectively, really reading them, not just skimming, making useful notes, planning your structure, then drafting, and really importantly, rewriting and proofreading. It's presented as this structured journey, not just like a sudden burst of inspiration.
And it's not just structure and grammar, is it? There's a whole section on academic vocabulary that gets special attention.
Precisely. Part 3, vocabulary for writing. Because academic English uses language differently. It covers things like nouns, adjectives, adverbs, verbs, synonyms, even prefixes and prepositions, but all specifically for academic use. The idea is to move away from informal, idiomatic language. So instead of phrasal verbs like go on, you'd use a more formal word like continue. It's about precision and sounding, well, academic.
Okay, so you need the right words. But what about dealing with all the reading? How do you find the right information and read it critically? Our source talks about that too.
Yeah, that raises a key question. How do you handle the sheer amount of stuff you have to read? So there's a unit on finding suitable sources. It covers knowing which types of texts are appropriate for academic work journals versus websites, for example, how to use libraries, electronic databases effectively, and, crucially, how to evaluate what you find online. Is it reliable? Then, developing critical approaches teaches you to spot the difference between facts and opinions. Like, Kuala Lumpur is the capital of Malaysia. That's a fact. But Kuala Lumpur is a welcoming city. That's an opinion. You need to be able to distinguish those. It also stresses checking, who wrote it, when was it published, what edition is it, and understanding how abstracts are structured, background, aim, method, results, to quickly grasp what an article is about.
Okay, now let's tackle something that trips up a lot of students, especially international ones. Plagiarism. Our source calls it an academic crime, which sounds pretty serious.
It is serious. Yeah. And it's defined very clearly. Basically, plagiarism means taking ideas or words from a source without giving credit to the author. In the academic world, particularly in English-speaking countries, ideas and words are treated like private property. They belong to the person who first thought or wrote them. So this creates a bit of a challenge for students, right? You have to show you've read the important stuff by citing it, but you also have to explain those ideas in your own words and reach your own original conclusions. It's a balancing act.
It really does sound like walking a tightrope. Why is it such a huge deal? What actually happens if you get it wrong?
Well, connecting this to the bigger picture, there are several really important reasons to avoid it. First, it shows you understand the rules of the academic community you're joining. It's about integrity. Second, just copying stuff doesn't help you learn or develop your own understanding. It kind of defeats the purpose of being there. Third, honestly, it's usually pretty easy to detect nowadays. Teachers spot it, and there's sophisticated software universities use. And finally, the consequences can be severe. You might fail the assignment, fail the whole course, or even in serious cases, get kicked out of university. So the stakes are really high.
Wow, okay. So how do students actually avoid it in practice, especially when they're grappling with complex ideas, maybe in a second language? What are the practical techniques?
The sources outline two main things. First, acknowledging sources properly. That means using citations correctly, those little notes in the text, and having a full list of references at the end with all the publication details. You have to get the formatting right for your institution's style. Second, and this is often the harder part, mastering paraphrasing and summarizing. A good paraphrase isn't just changing a few words. It usually needs a different sentence structure, mostly different vocabulary, but it must keep the original meaning. It's about putting the idea into your own voice. Summarizing is slightly different. It's about pulling out just the main points, leaving out the examples and details. The book actually gives practice exercises for this, with answers, because it's a skill that really does take practice to nail.
Right. So once you've got your head around the sources and you're being careful about plagiarism, the next challenge is actually structuring your own writing, shaping your ideas. Our sources get into the nitty-gritty of this, starting with paragraphs.
Yeah, paragraphs are the basic building blocks, aren't they? And getting them right really helps the reader follow your thinking. Well-structured paragraphs divide your argument into logical chunks, makes it much easier to digest. The book explains, what a paragraph actually is, why we divide texts up like that, and how they help organize your argument. It also covers how to link sentences smoothly within the paragraph and how to transition between paragraphs. That flow is key.
Okay, building blocks. And what about the bigger picture for longer assignments, like essays? The introduction and conclusion, how important are they?
Oh, hugely important. What's interesting is how specific their functions are. A good introduction isn't just waffle. It should be maybe about 10% of the total length. And it needs to clearly state the purpose and scope of your paper. You might need to define key terms, give a little background, say what your main point or aim is, and maybe outline how you're going to approach it. Sets the scene.
And conclusions, which you usually write after you've done the main body, they shouldn't bring in new stuff. They need to clearly answer the question in the title, sum up your main points, and maybe offer a final thought. The sources warn against starting intros too broadly or vaguely. Get straight to the point.
Okay, makes sense. And then finally, that last crucial step before you hit submit polishing the work, revision and proofreading. Are they the same thing? No, they're distinct but both vital. If we connect this to the overall process, revision is essential for coursework. It's when you take time to step back and improve the work. You're looking at the clarity of your arguments, the logical flow, the strength of your evidence, the overall structure. It's the bigger picture stuff. Is it convincing? Does it make sense? Proofreading is the final check for both coursework and exams. This is where you hunt for those small errors, typos, grammar mistakes, punctuation, formatting errors that can make your work look sloppy or even hard to understand. Our source points out common style mistakes to look for here too. Being too personal, I think. Using rhetorical questions, using contractions like don't instead of do not, or maybe not actually answering the question you were set. Academic English generally needs a more impersonal, objective tone. That final polish really matters for making a professional impression.
So, bringing this all together, what does it really mean for you, the listener, maybe planning your study abroad trip, or perhaps you're already there navigating it all? We've seen that English for student life abroad is clearly so much more than just, conversational fluency.
Indeed, it really covers a whole spectrum of skills, doesn't it? From the practical things like managing money and health to being proactive socially so you don't feel isolated, and then critically, mastering the nuances of academic English. Man, that means understanding the writing process, building that specific vocabulary, using sources ethically, and communicating clearly and formally. Stephen Bailey's academic writing, which we've drawn on, is presented as a really valuable guide precisely because it recognizes all these adjustments international students have to make. It's a big shift.
It really is about becoming a well-informed and competent academic in every sense. Okay, so here's a final thought for you to think about. If effective academic writing, as our sources suggest, is truly about showing your own understanding and reaching your own conclusions, how much of what you learned about showing what you know in your previous education might actually need to be, well, unlearned or maybe recalibrated for you to really succeed in this new academic culture? Something to ponder.
Definitely something to think about.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.